2 incomes. 6 figures. A nice house in a good neighborhood. 2 cars in the driveway. Whole Foods on Sundays. DoorDash on weeknights. From the outside, this is what success looks like in modern America. This is what stability looks like. This is what being responsible adults is supposed to feel like. And yet, if you're honest, something feels off. Because when you zoom out and look at the real balance sheet of your life, not the one your bank shows you but the one you feel in your body, the numbers don't look as good. No time. No margin. No room to breathe. Every weekday is booked. Every weekend is recovery mode. Every dollar already has an assignment before it even hits your account. There's no flexibility. No slack in the system. No exit. You make more money than ever, but somehow you're harder to replace than ever. Missing one paycheck wouldn't be inconvenient, it would be catastrophic. One job loss, one burnout, one sick kid, and the whole structure starts to wobble. So let's get one thing straight right now. You're not rich. You're not even close. You're fully booked. Booked by meetings, by payments, by obligations, by a lifestyle that quietly requires both of you to keep running at full speed just to stay in place. And that's the most dangerous financial position a household can be in. Not because you don't earn enough, but because you've built a life that gives you no room to stop. This is the dual income trap. And the reason it's so effective is because it doesn't feel like a trap at all. The most dangerous part of the dual income trap isn't the spending. It's the illusion it creates in your head. The illusion that you're finally doing well. The illusion that you've crossed some invisible line into safety. When 2 paychecks start hitting the same account, your financial anxiety doesn't disappear, it just goes quiet. And your brain interprets that silence as success. This is what phantom wealth feels like. It's not real wealth, it's the sensation of wealth. It's confidence without control. The money is flowing so your nervous system relaxes. You stop checking prices as closely. You stop questioning upgrades. You stop asking whether your life actually works and start assuming that it must because look at the income. But cash flow is not freedom. Cash flow is motion. And motion can hide instability for a very long time. Underneath the higher income, nothing has actually slowed down. You don't have slack. You don't have optional living. You don't have room for error. Your lifestyle still requires perfect execution every single month. Both paychecks. On time. No surprises. No deviations. The system only works if everything keeps working. That's why phantom wealth is so intoxicating. It rewards performance, not resilience. As long as you keep running, it feels fine. Even impressive. But the moment you imagine stopping, even briefly, the fear comes rushing back. The payments don't pause. The obligations don't care how burned out you feel. The machine needs to be fed. Here's the line that cuts through all of it. If missing one paycheck would collapse your life, you're not wealthy. You're leveraged. And most dual-income households don't realize how leveraged they are until it's too late. Because the leverage isn't visible. It's hidden inside fixed costs that quietly hardened over time. A slightly bigger house. A slightly nicer car. A daycare bill that feels unavoidable. Each decision makes sense on its own. Together, they form a structure that assumes your highest earning years will also be your most intense working years. That's how you end up in what I call the peak earning prison. A life engineered around the most optimistic version of your future. A future where both of you stay healthy. Both of you stay employed. Both of you stay ambitious. Both of you want to keep playing this game at full speed. Your mortgage is priced for that version of you. Your lifestyle is calibrated to that version of you. Your identity starts to revolve around that version of you. The problem is that version of you is temporary. People change. Energy changes. Priorities change. Bodies change. Industries change. Kids change everything. Life does not run on Excel. It runs on entropy. And the moment reality deviates from the plan, even slightly, the prison bars become visible. What once felt like abundance starts to feel like pressure. What once felt like freedom starts to feel like obligation. You realize that you didn't buy flexibility. You bought fragility. You didn't design a life that can absorb shocks. You designed a life that demands peak performance indefinitely. And that's not wealth. That's just a very well-paid form of risk. At this point, most people still want to believe the story works. They'll say, Sure, things feel tight sometimes, but the math makes sense. Two incomes are better than one. More money is more security. So let's stop talking in feelings and actually run the numbers. Not the optimistic numbers you tell yourself. The forensic numbers. Let's take a very normal, very American scenario. The second earner in the household makes $60,000 a year. On paper, that sounds meaningful, responsible, necessary even, but paper lies. Real life doesn't. That $60,000 is taxed at your highest marginal rate, not the friendly rate you imagine. Federal, state payroll taxes quietly carve off roughly 30% before the money even becomes yours. Suddenly, that 60 turns into about $40,800. And that's before life takes its cut. Now subtract childcare or after-school care because someone has to watch the kids while both of you work. $15,000 a year disappears immediately. Then subtract the costs that only exist because this job exists. Commuting. Gas. Parking. Eating lunch out because there's no time to prep. Clothes that match the role you're expected to play. Another $5,000 gone without a second thought. And now comes the part almost no one tracks because it doesn't show up as a single bill. The convenience costs. DoorDash on nights when neither of you has the energy to cook. Cleaning services because weekends are already exhausted. Instacart because time has become more valuable than money, at least that's what you tell yourself. $6,000 evaporates into frictionless transactions that barely register as spending. Run the math again. That $60,000 job now nets around $14,800 a year. Roughly $1,200 a month. Let that sink in. One of you isn't earning $60,000. One of you is working full-time year-round under constant stress to net $1,200 a month. And that's assuming nothing goes wrong. No unexpected overtime. No sick days. No burnout. No extra help needed at home. This is the clean version of the math. Reality is usually messier. This is where the psychology turns ugly. Because once you see the number, you can't unsee it. You realize that the second income isn't funding freedom. It's funding maintenance. It's paying to keep the system running at the same unsustainable speed. This is what I call the convenience tax. It doesn't show up on your W-2. The IRS doesn't list it as a line item. But it quietly drains dual-income households more than almost any other expense category. You think you're buying time. You think you're buying efficiency. What you're really buying is the ability to keep showing up to the very jobs that created the time scarcity in the first place. You're not buying convenience. You're buying survival so you can keep working. The system feeds on this loop. Work more to afford convenience. Buy convenience so you can work more. The second income doesn't break the cycle, it locks it in. And the most insidious part is that it all feels rational while it's happening. Each expense is small enough to justify. Each decision feels earned. But together, they turn a household with impressive gross income into one with shockingly little net freedom. This is the moment where the dual income trap stops being a theory and becomes a diagnosis. Because the problem isn't that you don't make enough money. It's that the structure of your life quietly converts income into exhaustion and calls it success. At this point, it's tempting to swing to one of two extremes. Either you blame yourself entirely and spiral into guilt, or you blame the system entirely and give up any sense of agency. Both are comforting. Both are wrong. So let's be honest about the system first. Housing in America is priced for dual-income households. That's not a conspiracy, it's math. When two salaries bid on the same limited supply of homes, prices rise to absorb that purchasing power. Childcare costs have quietly become a financial moat that punishes single-earner families and nudges both partners into the workforce whether they want to be there or not. And the credit system doesn't ask whether your lifestyle is resilient. It asks how much you can borrow at your current peak earning capacity, then happily hands you the rope. None of this is imaginary. The pressure to run on two incomes is real, structural, relentless. But here's the line that matters and most people don't want to hear it. The system pressures you into two incomes. It does not force you to spend both. That gap between pressure and choice is where everything changes. Because most households don't just use the second income to survive the system. They use it to signal their place within it. This is where we need to introduce a more uncomfortable concept. social signaling investment. Some spending actually does function as an investment in future earning power. In certain careers, appearance matters. Presence matters. The way you show up in rooms matters. Sales, leadership, client-facing roles, networking-heavy industries all operate on perception as much as performance. Living in a neighborhood that aligns with your professional environment, dressing in a way that signals competence, stability, or authority, those choices can compound. They open doors. They reduce friction. They can pay for themselves over time. But most people don't stop there. What starts as functional signaling quietly mutates into something else. Spending not to increase opportunity but to avoid falling behind. Luxury upgrades designed to say, "We're doing well," even when no one asked. Cars that impress neighbors instead of clients. Houses sized for status, not for life. Vacations taken less for rest and more for proof. At that point, it stops being investment and becomes costume. A performance you have to keep funding month after month just to maintain the illusion. And here's the problem with costumes. They don't generate optionality. They consume it. If the spending doesn't increase your future earning power, reduce your risk, or expand your choices, it's not an investment. It's a liability wearing a nice outfit. A prop that looks successful from the outside while quietly locking you into higher fixed costs on the inside. This is where the dual income trap tightens. The system nudges you into 2 paychecks, and social comparison convinces you to absorb both into a lifestyle that requires constant validation. You're no longer just working to live. You're working to keep the signal alive. To stay in the right neighborhood. To keep up with the unspoken standards set by everyone else who is also quietly drowning. And the tragedy is that none of this feels reckless while it's happening. It feels normal. It feels adult. It feels like what responsible people are supposed to do. But normal is not the same thing as safe. And responsible, in a system built on leverage, often just means fragile in a nicer house. You don't escape this trap by pretending the system isn't rigged. You escape it by recognizing exactly where the system ends and your choices begin. Escaping the dual income trap isn't about motivation. It's about intervention. You don't reason your way out of a system that's quietly bleeding you. You cut it off. You stabilize it. Then you redesign it so it can't trap you again. The first stage is emergency mode. This is where denial ends. You stop asking how much the second income earns on paper and calculate what it produces in real life. Take a typical case. $60,000 a year. Sounds solid. Now watch it evaporate. After marginal taxes, you're down to around $40,000. Childcare wipes out another 15. Work-related costs take 5 more. Convenience spending quietly eats 6. Suddenly that $60,000 job is netting around $1,200 a month. That's the shock. One of you isn't bringing in an income. One of you is working full-time to keep the machine from stalling. Once you see that number, the bleeding becomes obvious. And bleeding demands a tourniquet. This is where lifestyle upgrades freeze. Completely. For 90 days, nothing gets better on the outside. No new subscriptions. No upgrades disguised as self-care. No, we've earned this. And here's the rule that actually breaks the dopamine cycle. If you feel the urge to buy something online, you wait 48 hours before hitting buy now. No exceptions. That pause is long enough for the chemical high to wear off and short enough to expose how little you actually wanted it. Most purchases don't survive 48 hours of silence. At the same time, you attack the biggest sources of convenience tax. Food delivery. Subscriptions you forgot existed. Services that exist only because you're exhausted. This isn't about becoming frugal. It's about reclaiming margin. Breathing room. Proof that your life doesn't immediately fall apart when spending stops expanding. Once the bleeding slows, you move into the second stage. This is the structural rebuild. This is where most people fail because it requires designing a life that works on one income. Not someday. In practice. That doesn't mean someone quits tomorrow. It means fixed costs are slowly brought down to a level the lower income can support. Rent or mortgage. Cars. Recurring bills. Everything that quietly assumes 2 salaries forever. This is also where automation becomes non-negotiable. The higher income stops touching your lifestyle entirely. Gets hidden. automatically. The day it hits your account, it's swept into savings, investments, and debt repayment before you ever see it. No decision required. No willpower involved. You can't spend what you never experience as spendable. Automation removes temptation by design. This is when the backup generator comes back online. For the first time, your household has redundancy again. One income covers survival. The other builds security. If a job disappears, the house doesn't. If someone burns out, the system doesn't implode. You haven't become wealthy yet, but you've stopped being fragile. And that's a massive upgrade. The final stage is where the dual income trap fully loses its power. Optionality mode. This is what two incomes were supposed to buy from the beginning. One person can slow down without panic. Switch careers without detonating the budget. Work part-time. Start something uncertain. Take a calculated risk with contained downside. At this point, the second income is no longer a requirement. It's a defensive weapon. A buffer against volatility. A shield, not a chain. The household stops asking how to afford more and starts asking a better question. What actually buys us freedom? Because the real goal was never to earn more money. It was to stop needing every dollar just to keep the lights on. Let's be precise about what this conversation is actually about. This is not about saving money, and it's definitely not about sacrifice. It's not about becoming smaller, cheaper, or less than who you are. What you're really doing when you step out of the dual income trap is buying back your future. Every dollar you stop leaking out of your life isn't deprivation. It's leverage. It's time returned to you. It's the quiet rebuilding of options you didn't even realize you had given away. The system teaches you to see restraint as loss, but in reality what you're doing is reversing a bad trade. You're exchanging artificial comfort for real control. We've been sold a very specific image of luxury. A bigger house. A newer car. A vacation that looks good from the outside. But that definition is shallow and it's fragile. Real luxury doesn't show up on Instagram. It shows up in the absence of panic. It's waking up without the low-grade fear that one bad month, one layoff, one health issue could unravel everything you've built. Luxury is knowing you can absorb a hit and keep standing. It's having the ability to say no. No to a boss. No to a schedule that's draining you. No to a life that looks impressive but feels suffocating. That is what freedom actually feels like when you strip away the marketing. And if this video made you uncomfortable, that's not a failure. That's awareness finally cutting through the noise. Discomfort is often the first signal that something you've normalized is quietly costing you more than you thought. Do one thing after this video ends. Send it to your partner. Not to win an argument. Not to assign blame. But because this isn't really a conversation about money at all. It's a conversation about the life you're trading away month after month, without ever sitting down to price it honestly.